Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Dudley Board of Selectmen and Finance Appropriation and Advisory Committee joint meeting. Today is February 29th, 6:30 p.m. I'll read a statement. This meeting is being recorded, and without objection, the Chair of the Board of Selectmen will facilitate item 2 on the agenda, with the understanding that the FAA Chair will chair the FAA Committee concurrently, including any allowable discussions, questions, business, or motions requested or required under item 2. Chairman Siganevich isn't here tonight, so I'll take over. In the hashtag single data department, my daughter Jessica's here with me once again. So, first order of business, as always, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the FAA. Mike? May 22nd, 2023.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have three. I'll have a vote on all three at the same time, if you guys don't mind. We have the meeting minutes from Monday, May 22nd, 2023. We have the minutes here from Monday, October 16th, 2023. And we have the meeting this past Thursday, February 8th, 2024. Is there any changes to the minutes for either one of those, or any of those three?
I don't have
No
any.
changes?
None for me.
All right, seeing no changes, I'll call to a vote to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 3, we have an appointment tonight. MJ Gasky's here tonight. We're going to appoint him as the acting highway superintendent. MJ, come on up. Mr. Ruda, you want to kick off, please?
Mr. Chairman, it's,
Should you or should I? Yeah,
Chief
Mayor.
is the chair of the
Yeah, Chief.
screening
Yeah,
committee.
thank you.
so-
Sorry, I should have done that.
Just like I mentioned Monday's meeting, the committee made a recommendation that at this point, because we didn't have qualified people that apply for the position, and we need somebody at the highway department to lead through, especially with the months coming up still, winter months. So we recommended that MJ Gatsky be appointed as acting highway superintendent by the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased with his performance so far. I have no complaints to the storms, the wind, the rain, the snow. Great job.
I'll second that, Mr. Landry. I mean, like I said, MJ stepped up. There's no other way to say it. You know, lost a key employee, and MJ stepped up, you know, just to be the foreman, but also, you know, is willing to take on this role. You know, we need somebody, you know, to be in charge, and I'm glad you're here tonight. I really am. So, what's the board's pleasure on this one?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
based on the recommendation of the Highway Superintendent Screening Committee, I make the motion at this time to appoint MJ Gatsky as our interim Highway Superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Landry. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations and thank you. And thank you, MJ.
Thank you.
Great job.
Keep it up.
Keep it up. Awesome. Item 4, new business. The FY25 budget review and recommendations. Mr. Ruda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Selectmen received an overview at the last meeting. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Mayotte to see where he'd like me to begin and how he'd like me to proceed.
Fair enough. Mr. Mayor?
Well, if there's no objections, I'd like to kind of maybe start with our revenue projections first.
Okay?
I'm assuming this is sheet with everything, or what we have so far?
There should be more to that. Is there another sheet in there? I'll try to put it up on the screen as well.
Budget overview sheet.
Yeah, non-local receipts too. Mike?
Yeah, non-local receipts. Okay, here we go. Mr. Chairman, the first thing we kind of pointed out on Monday was the cannabis excise tax. And you remember last year we were caught a little bit by surprise. I mean, not the cannabis excise tax, I'm sorry, motor vehicle excise tax. We were caught last year a little bit by surprise in that we got more than we originally projected. So this year, we had a little bit of a back and forth internally with the town accountant, with the treasurer collector, and we contacted DOR. And the advice that we've received to date is to either level fund, same as what we received last year, or to slightly decrease. So for the purposes of this being the draft revenue projection, we've level funded at 1.7 million.
No, I don't have that one. I don't know.
It's on the screen,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, we only got the back end, the non-local receipts.
Oh.
Yeah. So you level funding?
We're level funding motor vehicle for now. Rich mentioned that he'd like to wait until he sees the second commitment, which will come in April, I believe. And we'll have a better idea as to how it's stacking up.
You know if we're on pace?
We may be a little behind, but Rich could probably better answer that question.
No one.
I'll be Ann-ish. Thank you. So the question was a projection. I'm sorry, I wasn't part of the DOR call, but what is being reported back sounds correct. The idea that you don't want to take another step up on something that hasn't even been committed. I'm surprised that I don't have the second commitment in hand. Usually, one chases the other. You wouldn't know about the third because likely it's a car that's yet to have been bought. But the first commitment would be whatever, 12/15, 12/31, already on the books. The second commitment would be that transition. Fingers crossed, it was prosperous. Maybe people had some gains in the stock market. That's my editorializing. When the commitment is made, you can go by collection rate from last year.
So, he level funded it from last year. I mean, we're not talking about going up, but I'm kind of more concerned about it being less. You think we'll be on target based on what we know now?
It's the one thing, there's no formula for it.
I paid mine today, just so you know.
I could, from here, Mr. Chairman, I could see the halo over your head.
You only asked me 3 times, text, email, and
No.
mail. But go ahead.
You think and I like you, see how persistent I am on others.
Right.
The thought being it's 90, 75, 40, 25, and 10, so it's that big jump from, that third to the fourth year or the fourth to the fifth year. Who knows? But you can always go by your collection rates from last year, and really I had a line at the door today. So you don't know what's been collected, considering you probably aren't sending out the pink bills for another 3 weeks, and you wouldn't be collecting those because you have 14 days for those. So best case scenario, it's 5 weeks out. But back to the second commitment, I'm surprised our deputy collector is the one who prints them. The sooner they print them, the sooner they're on to the next one. They also get the deputy services, so there is sort of a push from an external force to get those settled.
Did that answer your question, Mike, or Jana, or whoever?
I guess my question would be, when you send out the first commitment compared to first commitment last year.
I had that
what
in
would be
here.
is there
There's a $50,000 difference between last year and this year.
an increase?
Either way, it was 1.2 for the first commitment.
But
So,
I'm saying compared to the first commitment of last year,
yes,
it's higher, not lower.
it's similar.
What about, and you said you mailed out the second commitment already?
I don't have it in hand.
Okay, no,
So that's sort of the $1,248,23. 2024, $1,269,000 versus $1,248,000 from last year.
Okay,
So it's up.
thank you.
All right. What's our leeway on projecting this? Level funded, or what's the DOR's balance on excise tax?
Well, so I actually can show you the email that we got from DOR, or I can summarize it for you. I'm afraid I'll mess up the screen if I go too crazy with finding the email, but
Okay.
she said, level or just slightly below. Don't overproject it. Yeah.
Makes sense.
And
Mr.
I,
Chairman?
believe me, after last year, I've saved that email, and it's gonna be framed and hung above my desk if necessary.
But
Rich?
a follow-up to that is, if your collections are substantially different from the previous year, again, back to what was Monday night, your revenue projections need to be defensible. So if last year was an outlier, it was a high watermark, you'd need to adjust it the other direction, as opposed to it being 20% more for this year, then reasonably you should be able to take that step. And again, you're budgeting to a defensible number. So you're,
Question there.
You want other revenue sources, Mike, you want to cover?
Well, you were mentioning, you started off with the cannabis. Did you-
So the cannabis is up because sales are increased. We still, with the host community agreement, I think we actually touched upon that last year, that there's been some changes in the law. So the host community agreement right now is, on a statewide basis, essentially vacated.
Gone, right?
Yeah.
But we still have,
We have about,
we get excise tax still, right?
we get the excise tax, and that's,
Is that about level?
they've the sales are up, but that's not gonna do us a heck of a lot of good at this point. But the operation has also increased. So it's showing 109 as opposed to 88 last year.
Are we pretty firm on that, Mr. Rubin?
Yeah. Cemetery and grave openings is the next one. You'll notice a huge jump in that, and the reason for that is, and it's defensible, is because we're doing our own burials now as opposed to paying a vendor to do it.
Decrease in dog violations?
Well, the decrease in dog violations is because throughout COVID, we had a lot of unpaid dog licenses that were now, with the help of the police department, it's now in court, so it's gonna go up substantially, and then it's gonna moderate. So it's up. It was up because of the collections that were ongoing, and then it's getting back to a normal level at that point, following that.
Anybody have any questions? One more.
there, I don't have this sheet.
The investment earning went from 92,605 to 90.
Okay, maybe highlight the row we were talking about.
Last thing I heard about earnings is that the Fed was looking to lower the rate, and then there's the presumption that they're not doing it. So we're trying to hit a moving target, and remember, these are funds not in use. So the closer you have to budget things, the fewer extra dollars are going to be sitting around. To that end, your override for last year did not come into the coffers until February 1st, because it hadn't been assessed until January 1st. I can restate that if it's a little puzzling. So the first and second quarter, the preliminaries of real estate were the mathematical average of last year. So if we raised $10 million, we would get 2 quarters of $2.5 million, which would leave the next quarter to have whatever the new tax amount was going to be. Considering it was substantially larger, we are collecting an increase only on the second and third quarters, if that makes sense. So the $1.8 million, $900,000 for each quarter didn't show up until February 1st, and then it's expected to be here from May 1st. So for a cash flow purpose, $900,000 increase in February and May, technically it would be a deficit if you level expended all of your funds, 450. So think of $900,000 sitting in the bank for 6 months at 5%. So that's probably why it's a more conservative estimate until you get to, I don't know, maybe March or April.
Jonathan, what's under health?
So they,
Oh, sorry, Mike. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
so we're projecting, all right, I'm just trying to understand that number.
Your
So-
investment earnings is the average money that's sitting in the bank.
Right, so in 2024, rates were a bit lower. We project
Rates are similar right now.
With
maybe-
the override and the amount in stable, I would,
But hold on, two different things.
yeah, I get that.
Your money held in reserve is not considered investment income. So you have, for example, you have $1 million in stabilization. That earns its 5% every month.
Where is that in the,
It is not, it's not a, it can be used as a source, but for investment earnings, it's the basic cash management. It's Finance 101. Tomorrow, I will go through and make sure my warrants are paid and all the other money sits in that money market account. The checking account earns us, a few pennies as opposed to getting the 5% over at a money market. We only do the sweep
so
once a week.
how do we account for that money sitting there? I mean, where's that investment interest accounted for? If it's not accounted for in that line item.
Hold on, let's take a step back. You would have general money unassigned, the normal cash flow. That is how your investment earnings works. Right now, you have the unemployment trust, and it's got $40,000 sitting there. There is going to be interest posted to it, and it grows that trust. That's the reason it's been separated off, and it's allowed to grow. Your OPEB trust, you go through, you have your $40,000 there. The idea is you're putting away money on year 1, we're in year 6 or 7, and some of your interest is now substantial enough to continue to grow. Your investment earnings are liquid cash, not assigned. So if you wanted to do the math, you'd say on average it is how much divided by your interest rate for the whole year. You're hoping to collect the money before you're spending it and have some money sitting there to earn you some interest, but the interest is not specifically assigned.
So then what exactly we doing, so when we say we got X amount in stable, in capital with stable. And
Right.
Where is that, where is exactly that money? It should be somewhere earning interest, so we should-
Correct.
It's not part of the revolving stuff in that line item, that interest should be shown somewhere around.
That's not going to be listed on your budget.
So so that's what I'm trying to figure out, we got a lot of money sitting in stable now. So
Correct.
Where is the revenue, the interest revenue from that?
It's in a trust fund. So the idea that you're $1 million worth of interest, $1 million worth of principal, and you earn $10,000 worth of interest, and the next month it is $1 million plus the $10,000 earning interest, so on and so forth. You've put it in the bucket, and you've put it off to the side. I can't go through and put the treasurer's expenses in its own account and allow it to grow interest. That is the operational expenses unassigned and the interest that it sits in the bank account. So you can go through and expend interest depending on how the trust is set up, but your three stabilizations are specific. You need to pull them out at a town meeting vote or transfer the earnings.
In other words, I got $1 million sitting stable.
Right,
It sits there for a year.
Yep.
We're getting 5%.
yes.
Should
$50,000.
expect to see $1,050,000 in stable
Correct.
the following year. But we don't.
What you do. Each month it goes through, it's not a budgetary line item. You're not going to list out interest earned on stabilization unless you are looking to expend it at a town meeting in a vote. So it's there, it's earning interest. Your investment income is what we just deposited today, excise bills, late real estate tax, so on and so forth.
And there's no, other than the trust fund like that, leaving it in there, there's no, we can't add that as a line item, at least to see where,
Your
how much
sta-
we're making on that?
Your statement of net assets.
Yeah,
Your-
I
your-
understand the
your-
overall statement, but we can,
Right.
we can't have a line item that says, hey, this is what you've earned.
However you want to include the trust fund, you should have, when they start the year, you'd have the fund balance, and then you'd fund your budget, your due to, your due froms, you'd set everything up, you'd have your unassigned balance, which you'd assume would be your start earning interest, but in all of your assignments, you go through, when I post interest every month, there is a Webster 5 account, Bank North, so on and so forth. They are not trust funds. There is trust funds money over at two different places. There's an escrow, there's a cemetery trust, and the way Mass General Law is set up, you put money off to the side so that money put away year one all of a sudden is significantly more on year 10. Many years ago, I'm guessing, somebody went through and put their salary in a high-earning savings account and tried to get the last couple of pennies out of it. You're only budgeting to that. And if you want to be more confused, we're marking things to market.
My assumption was, when we have a line item for investment earnings, it was our investment earnings.
General fund unassigned.
Put general fund unassigned next to investment earnings, because it's kind of confusing.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Jonathan, what was under health, under revenue? I noticed there was a jump there.
There's a jump in health because we have a full-time health agent now,
Oh, so,
be able to better enforce and collect fees and fines and so forth.
right. Oh, that makes sense. Thanks.
We were actually sharing one for a while and not able to. Okay?
Okay, thanks. Mr. Mayor, anything else on revenue?
Anybody else have a question on anything? Good up to there, yes.
More police admin details, looks like. Good.
Let me go up.
Yeah, I'm all set down to the box check thing.
The other thing we've done, Mr. Chairman, is for the non-local receipts, we've sent that to DOR because they have in the past looked those over for us. We haven't received a response, well, we've received a response that they have them, but we haven't gotten an opinion on what's being projected here. But we've asked them to take a look at it.
So what are these other line items? This, the bond premium?
It's your sources and uses. So in August of 2020, August 1st, 2023, the town sold a bond. We received a premium. We went through and we paid the underwriter, reduced premium, reduced the amount borrowed via premium, and there is a handful of dollars that are in reserve to make that first payment to, for interest. When we borrow money, unless it's for a single item, a bond issuance is going to be several articles put together. So out of the $3,085,000 that we borrowed, it's probably $3.3 million coming in, which was the $1 million water purification center. $700,000 was going to be for road. There was $775,000 for fire engine, so on and so forth. We went through and put the biggest power amount in there so that we could get a higher bid with the presumption that there was going to be a premium. Somebody went through and paid the town extra money so that you could go through and get a higher yield at a strategic point later on. And it's first in, first out. So anything received as a premium would have been paid back out. For argument's sake, instead of it being the $1 million water project, they took $30,000 off the power amount. We just paid the project at $30,000, and then there was a certain amount associated with that ratio and proportion of interest that was going to be paid back from it.
All right, anybody have any other questions on the revenue side of this?
I don't think so.
All right, Mr. Chairman, you're all set.
Okay, all good on revenue? Board members? Any other?
Actually, I'll just ask one question of the administrator. Level of confidence here in the 0.3356?
I think that I don't think we're over-projecting, we're definitely not over-projecting at this point. I don't have any, I don't think we're over projecting one penny of revenue at this point. How's that?
98%?
I'm sure I'll be told differently.
When are you gonna want a recommendation with solid numbers?
Well,
What's your timeframe?
we need, as you recall, Mr. Chairman, when we went to the school committee meeting on February 14th, we're waiting till the end of March for their final, end of March is what I remember, maybe. Someone remembers that differently, or mid-March?
That sounds right. I was just raising my hand saying, I would anticipate the governor providing a budget prior to that. Realistically, there was, isn't it by statute, there's a time where preliminary numbers come out, so back to the confidence, you,
Get later every year.
all right, well, if the best information is up there, the best information is up there, and if for some reason it's early, it's great. If it's late, then we know the source. But I don't know how you would rate confidence on a third-party number, just on speculation, so.
New growth, staying at 150?
150 is the number right now, and I don't see that changing. What we've done at the Board of Selectmen, have asked to have a 2.5% maximum placeholder on certain line items. For the sake of preparing the budget right now, we've placed that on the regional school budget, 2.5%. That's about a $275,000 increase. You ask about confidence, I don't think that's realistic, but we'll see how they come in. Mr. Chairman, we started on Monday, we kind of went over, and Rich went over the certain line items in his budget. There are 8 to 10 line items that are just actual, more like bills and actual numbers, as opposed to things that we can adjust up, down, or level fund. So I'm kind of leading up to something with that explanation, because I want to kind of give an example to the FAA. I gave it to the Board of Selectmen. But in Rich's budget, and I'm going to stop talking when Rich starts talking, if you look at items, the OPEB trust is the last item in his budget, $10,000. For the purposes of preparing this budget, I've placed that on the town meeting warrant as an article to give us a little room to maneuver. From Webster dispatch assessment up to unemployment self-insurance trust, Rich, those are pretty much solid numbers. For insurance general, that's the one thing that that our insurance carrier and the Hampshire Council of Governments, they have a little bit of leeway as to how they formulate that final number. I think Rich has explained in the past that they've used some reserve money in order to keep those premiums reasonable. It's actually group insurance, sorry. And it looks like the actual number that Rich provided is $921,670. Is that where we came down? Which was slightly lower than the original projections.
Line are we on?
105, yeah.
The group insurance,
Yeah, 920.
That's the health insurance.
921,670. So as of Monday morning, that was a great number.
Oh, boy. Is there another shoe?
there's not another shoe. It's a matter of, it's a great number knowing that we had our new officer come in, and your firemen are grant funded, so that becomes a moot point. We're, love to see MJ move forward and be your superintendent, in which case you'd have to backfill someone to be his foreman. So there's a place there. So whatever is expected to be hired or in the process of being hired has been taken care of. And as far as like for same, it doesn't exist. I guarantee you 3 people who left the highway department were not replaced with similar benefited people. There's no chance of it. So with the best information in hand, that is the number right there, given the 8% increase. And back to the 8% increase, they've cannibalized some of the premium. So as a trust, they're having Blue Cross administer the claims with the admin fee, but the claims are paid out very similarly to how Webster settles up with the monthly sewer bill, or is set up to be. There's a set amount that goes out every month to Blue Cross and to CVS, and that on top of everything. So what was being sold was something less than market price. So over the last 2 years, they cannibalized $8 million worth of the trust. So there's money held in reserve for future claims to be paid out. There is money that is meant as monies to pay future monthly, it's your float is what it is. They set it up to be a 3-month run out. So the money that's being received in for March 1st, which pays your April 1st coverage, should have been received 3 months ago. So they have that little group of the estimated monthly amount, they hold that in reserve, and that's pretty much the financial health of it. The idea being, if there's a good year or a bad year, there are enough stopgap measures in, and of course your budget is addressing sort of the projections going up, what you receive for investment earnings, obviously, if you have a decent amount of money that's sitting there. And it's the way the market plays out. You have reinsurance money, so in the event there's a terrible claim for $1 million, well, they start pooling after $275, so you would get $725,000 for it. So it's, I'm glancing over, 30 years worth of a health insurance trust and how it's operated. But at the end of the day, they have, in addition to their 0 increases, they mitigated last year's increase to 6%, and they're going up to 8%. And again, it was going to be as high as 10, but you voted on information up until December 31st. You only had that previous claim, so you're looking in the crystal ball ahead 18 months on what it's going to be.
Rich, on the county retirement, the number you got here, 1.3, that would include the discount?
Love a discount.
That's the discount going in, or is that the regular number?
$1,337,000 is the discount. It would be $1,360,000 if we didn't.
And your group, the health insurance, that number 921, that's taking into account all the retirees and everybody throughout the year? best projection there?
That's a pretty solid number, given everything.
It's-
And
So-
It's a moving target. How do I go through if I have an assistant who didn't take the health insurance, but in open enrollment raises his hand and saying, hello, I feel like being sick, so I'm gonna buy my health insurance. It is the same budgeting that I've done last year, the year before, the year before. I have a head count tied out to the invoice, tied out to, okay, going through seeing who doesn't have it, I guess is probably the easy way to go through and do it. You have these full-time employees, and today is the last day of the not the Affordable Care Act, but the part of the Obamacare was you needed to designate a look-back period. So it was from May 1st, 2023 till the last day of February. So anybody who had worked more than 20 hours per week in that look-back period is eligible for health insurance if they don't already have it.
And given with the number of potential retirees and new hires, is there any wiggle room in that number at all? Where we can look at that back in the supplemental
Yes,
adjustments?
absolutely.
We'll be stretching for everything we need there, you know?
If anything, I would expect to revisit, when is our town meeting?
May 20th?
May 20th. Open enrollment should be done by the second week in May. And anybody who's looking to change has already tapped me on the shoulder or normally does that. You get the, hey, Rich, you got a minute? And yes, in the open enrollment period for the 7/1 start,
We'll know before the town meeting whether we can.
Likely.
Play in that, all right.
But we could, we can of course carry it through to October if we needed to add to it, I would assume, right? I mean, is that, I mean, I would hate to have a voted budget and all of a
Lower his
sudden,
projection and.
I wouldn't
Fix it in.
October. Because I would hate to be, midway through April, beginning of May, and we've voted a budget and away we go.
Right.
Because we didn't leave ourselves enough room.
Right.
We'll have to revisit it if we have to revisit it, right?
Okay. This is in here.
the insurance general is your property and casualty. Maya has us at a 0, with all things being equal. Obviously, the minute that new fire truck rolls, there's going to be an add to it because it's not going to be the like for same. There is going to be an increase somewhere along the line, likely passed along to the water department because you are bringing a brand-new facility on, and it's not a $50,000 building. It's spectacular, and that was part of the email today. They've gone through, and we have the right amount of liability, right amount of coverage for what's been put into it. So if lightning strikes it in 6 months, we're not going to lose our shirt. We've got it properly insured.
Anybody have any questions on those for Rich?
Not on those line items, no.
So, Mr. Chairman, the reason I brought up those line items is because, just to do an exercise, those are, I think everyone agrees, line items that we don't have a lot of play in. Those are actual costs that we don't have the ability to adjust too much.
All of these starting says C calculation at N, is that what you're talking about?
The ones from 103 unemployment self-insurance trust
Yeah.
down to 112. I've put OPEB out on as an article for town meeting in May. And give us the opportunity to look at it in October if we needed to. Because I think, Mr. Chairman, you and I had a discussion about that. last year. But if we were to take those untouchable line items, because it is a substantial increase in the treasurer's budget, but if we were to take those municipal line items and pull out state assessments, which is another thing that we really don't have a lot of control over, as well as the two school assessment numbers when we get them, Bay Path and Dudley Charlton. The Bay Path is actual, by the way. We would be looking at right now, we've added point, so when we go through everything line item and by line item, for those line items that we really don't have much control over, and I don't have much control over making a recommendation for, we've only increased the municipal budget by 0.73% if we remove those untouchable line items. It's only in there just to keep it in mind as we go through the rest of it. The police budget, the fire budget, you know, a little bit up, a little bit down, but overall, those line items that I can make a recommendation on remained at 0.73%. Now, that said, we're negotiating with two unions right now as well. The fire union and highway negotiations start next week. So when we go to the overview sheet and we see $54,000 unassigned or whatever the bottom line is, I'm kind of leaving that available to close those negotiations before July 1st. Doesn't mean the whole amount, but it's,
You already committed 150 in free cash,
right.
and we're assuming the indirects staying at 212.
So water and sewer and the treasurer's office are using the Abrahams group to take a look at the calculations on both sides and kind of true it up to make sure that
We're gonna have a
we'll have something before the budget.
So, isn't this all DOR regs on the indirects? Exactly how they're broken down? Isn't that how it's done? Isn't it the DOR gives you a way of doing this?
They give you a methodology in the UMass manual on what's considered, there's a phrase for it, it's defensible, and
So what is Abraham's group gonna?
Abraham's group is going to settle a dispute, one way or another.
Okay. But assuming at this point, we're gonna keep that in. Assuming that doesn't change.
I left it in there as a placeholder. I believe the commissioners voted 50% again this year, which I don't think it's going to come back that we're that much off, but we'll see. I put it in as the same placeholder as it was last year. When we get the final report, we'll be able to have a good number on it.
Can I ask one more question about Rich's budget? I guess one more. This is the one that kind of puzzles me here. And this could make or break our year here. We've got increased debt exclusions of 225.
mm-hmm,
Right? I'm assuming that includes the fire truck and everything.
you got it.
You've got your maturing debt, it's almost 700,000. A huge increase. I'm assuming from one of our meetings that that is some of the work that was authorized, we were authorized to borrow to do the work down on Eagle Drive. Is included in that, about 300,000?
Some of it is. At least 60, depending on which estimate you want to use, about 75,000 is the next year's payment for that.
Of that 700,000?
No, yeah, $75,000 is going to pay that debt service.
So we put a bond on that amount?
I got a placeholder bond for it. I'd love to get more money so that I'm not putting $300,000 into the market for a short-term note.
So what I'm trying to understand is where's the difference from last year? You had 365, now we're up to 7. You're saying 75 accounts for that.
Right.
It's not the 300 that's mixed in there. So if there's the 300 that was mixed in there, I'd say, fine, it's offset by your increase in your debt exclusion. But why is there such a difference in it? So 365, to me, 365 last year, our debt exclusions go up by 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
70, and now you add another 75, so there's your payment. So what's the difference? Why is that?
It's all
so
part of
high?
the 1.8 that's coming on, or the 3.085. We made the bond, so we're paying for that.
Which bond is that? Like, you're not talking about the school. Okay.
Different item. Give me a minute. Got the brine machine, we've got some public safety vehicles, got the fire truck coming in. We have the 300,000. Got these flipped on there, but it's the 300,000, and as of today, we have only one road betterment committed, but we've borrowed the money. And at one point, there's going to be a difference between the betterment paid in advance and the interest associated with it.
But isn't the betterment reflected in the taxes?
Yes and no. So in a perfect world, you have 10 people and the annual payment is $5,000, everybody ponies up $500. If you paid your betterment in advance, the interest associated with that portion of the debt payment doesn't exist. It needs to be paid from another source. You're right, in a perfect world, nobody paid the betterment in advance, and what is billed or what is assessed to the third quarter tax bill would go into one bucket and be paid immediately out into for the debt service.
Okay. But you're still budgeting.
We're still short for the
budgeting
interest.
for the entire year of 2025, so.
Because as of right now, we have it, we've borrowed the money, and it's a commitment that needs to be paid. There was the first interest payment on one of the betterments that hasn't been accepted yet. So there's that gap. At one point, and I won't speak for the assessor, there's going to be sort of that workout that here's what we have. For argument's sake, you have 10 people, 3 paid early, 7 did not. What was paid early is separated off into an account, and they will go through year by year and say, okay, this person at this address, 1/10 drawdown. The difference of it, because if you paid it early, there's committed interest that the town of Dudley is on the hook for. So 30% of the interest, committed interest for whatever betterment you want to talk about, needs to be funded by another source.
Anybody have any more questions? No? Okay. All right, good.
My door is open, and I'm happy
I may-
to walk.
I know you've been-
Absolutely. This is a joint meeting, and, you know, I have binders full of information and numbers, and I'd love to go on a deep dive, but, and I'll extend that to when we go through the road betterments, happy to have Lisa here to translate.
Mr. Chairman,
Anything else on any other departments that are here that you guys have questions on?
The only one I got a question on, for the schools, we said like the Dudley Charlton will have numbers, what, end of March? Is the Bay Path number, is that a solid number?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Anything else from the FAA on any department or any number on the overview sheet?
Just at first look, earlier it was last month when we were going through the sewer water budgets. We had talked about them possibly being overestimated, but it looks like they've been updated. Is that correct? Like some of the salary estimates because of the contract negotiations that are coming up.
I think we asked them to pull a few salary percentages out.
Yeah, because I think initially we were looking at like 10% increases. Yeah, but it looks like they've been pulled back to 3.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we use that as a placeholder.
Perfect.
Yeah, Jana, that was one of the first things I looked at.
That's next week, actually,
Yeah,
those negotiations.
right.
What else?
There's still some things that need to be filled in on water sewer. I think we're still waiting on them. Scott, you have any context you can add on those?
On those salaries, right, we've lost a laborer. It's going to be replaced with a secondary operator. That's going to be an increase. That's where the salary increases are going to be.
All right.
There's a secondary operator that's going to be bumped up to a primary operator. That's going to be an increase. That's by virtue of what the state requires we have to have for titled personnel, primary operator, secondary operator, so on.
Rich?
Through the chairman. This is these are Massachusetts regulations for the distribution of water. Need to make sure that the people who are there have the certifications required.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
They have to be certified to the proper level.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions for FAA, the treasure collector, water sewer, police chief? Okay. Let's flip back over the agenda. So now we wait, Mr. Ruda, to get the rest of the numbers filled in?
One more thing, like Columbo.
One more thing. It's just one more thing.
Very, very rough draft town meeting warrant, just so they can further explain some of the things I'm recommending.
Okay.
Again, very rough draft, hasn't been edited, hasn't gone to legal, hasn't been completed, but just the start of it. Article 5 is gonna go away. Originally, I thought maybe we could, if what I anticipate will be a vote by the board to send the capital amount to the voters for a debt exclusion vote for the schools. I originally thought that if that didn't pass, we could borrow the money and structure the debt so that it wouldn't hit us as hard, because if it fails, it comes out of our budget. But both town council and Rich have said that that's a non-starter. You can't borrow money to pay for borrowed money, so that makes sense to me now.
Right, Rich.
So that's gonna go away.
So if we're talking about debt exclusions, if I go to last year's debt exclusion, I have an FY '24, which lists '23 at $1,140,000. For '24, the year we are in, it is 803. This year, with several new items on it, it's only $1,023,000. So the difference between the $1,140,000 and the $1,023,000, you're $125,000 less than you were for the end of FY 2023, and that's with a whole bunch of new things that are hitting the tax rate. So one of the first arguments made that we can get back to FY '23 levels, at least as far as a debt excluded item. And to go on to that next step, there is a Bay Path, Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School District. There's a capital assessment on there in the 150 range. The Dudley Charlton Field renovation has held pretty steady at the 77,000. So what's being proposed is very similar. I'm sure if you go back, probably you'd have to go back to 2009, when they still had the sewer line on, which was approximately 580,000 on the DE1. So the whole idea is you don't want to take a step back. You'd like to make a modest increase above and beyond. And the answer back to the local taxpayer is that we're managing capital projects and there is a specific sunset provision upon the completion. So at one point, I'm going to get a call from Irene Hool or Cami Lemica that yes, the Dudley Charlton Field renovation project has been completed. Next year's debt excluded amount is 0. Hopefully a year or two in advance, we would have a similar dollar amount to place on there. And remember, the DE1 is the amount above and beyond new growth and 2.5, and it's temporal. It's only for that specific period, only for the specific project. So there's some room to get back to what was 2 years ago.
Thanks, Rich. Go ahead, Jay.
Article 6 is a placeholder for regulatory and compliance. We had borrowed that, or we're going to borrow for that money that's now been spent. We authorized that last year at the town meeting. It was like $297,000 for the cap landfill issue in and around the Eagle Drive neighborhood, the mitigation costs associated with that. This year, we're closer to coming up with a plan, and we're going to actually have some public hearings in a month or so about putting a water line in to completely and permanently solve that problem. So we've figured a placeholder for phase 2 of $85,000 for next year, the cost to continue on with those filtration systems, the testing and so forth. That's a placeholder. If we get close to getting an article on this town meeting for that project, we may be able to eliminate that or even draw it down a little bit more. But for now, we still need to pay for those mitigation costs. And that's not in the budget. That will have to be approved at town meeting. So I'm going to ask for that to come out of capital improvement stabilization as opposed to borrowing for it. It's a much smaller amount than it was last year. Article 7 is a placeholder for the $10,000 for the OPEB trust that I mentioned we pulled out of the budget. Article 8 is the elected full-time officials' salary increases. Article 9 was previously funded the past years in our budget. It's the employee merit pool. That's the increases that the non-union employees get based on their performance evaluations. We figured $19,839 from free cash. Generally, we usually we put that off till October. I don't think we'll be able to do it from free cash this year, and we wouldn't want to pull out of stabilization, so I think that's probably gonna remain in place until October, at which case we'll fund it with free cash and assign those increases. Mandatory dam inspections, have to do it, 25,000. Article 11, grant and project design. So this was also another line item that I removed from this budget and put on as a warrant article. I asked the people to vote in favor as to whether or not they want to continue to pursue grants. In order to pursue grants, we need a minimal amount of money, so I've put a placeholder on the warrant for that.
Mr. Chairman, that a Scribner's error, it says 25, then it says 45.
Yes,
one
very
is it?
rough draft.
Which one is it?
It's 45.
Okay,
Right?
thank you.
Minimum 45. I try not to do too many shock and awe at these.
No, I hear you.
The planning board wants to sponsor the short-term rental bylaw that we talked about a month ago. Pierpoint Estates is gonna come off. I just haven't removed it yet. It's not ready to go. For street acceptance, St. Anthony might be ready to go for road acceptance.
Mr. Ruda, then the road acceptance has to be done at the Springtown meeting, right?
Yes. I think we changed that.
Did we
Yeah.
change that?
Couple years
Okay, I
ago.
wanna make, okay. Someone's gonna ask.
But I think St. Anthony's gonna be ready to go.
All right.
We're pursuing a dam for Merino Dam and I always stress when we go over this, when we get grant-funded dam projects, and we can mitigate an ongoing issue with a dam, it's worth every penny, because you can see it's very costly to inspect and maintain these dams. If we can match that, make that investment and match those grant funds, which I don't know what the total will be yet, that's why there's no amount there, but if we can match these grant funds with free cash or even capital improvement, we get rid of the issue forever. So it's worth every penny, and we don't pay for most of it, so I think that's an important article that I hope the FAA and Board of Selectmen will support. Eisenhower Drive street acceptance. There's going to be the remainder of the bond used for repair of the sewer pump station there, so that when we take it over, it's up to spec. It's almost complete, but there's some escrow money left, and they're gonna use that to complete the station. And it's in the process of being, the meets and bounds are in the process of being drawn up, and that should be ready for acceptance in May at the town meeting. And we want to do that now while the street is in good shape and it meets the requirements, as opposed to waiting, and then it becomes a betterment situation for those residents.
So, Mr. Chair, the remaining bond is sufficient, I guess, to complete that work?
Yes.
Close. Still has some issues with the electrical work needing to be done, and the estimate came in quite high, which I have to go back and see what the reason is for that, but that's the only loophole right now.
So that developer just kind of dropped off the map and disappeared? Thank you. Former town employee.
And then, Mr. Chairman, Article 17 is a placeholder for, at the request of the school district, for a solar grant that requires some town meeting action. I haven't heard anything more on that, but it's just a placeholder.
Are there any other, Mr. Ruda, planning board placeholders that they'll put in, or is this it?
I think this is it.
Mr. Zakowski?
I believe we're going to have two, possibly three. One is for retained earnings for the true-up with Webster. And we may have an unpaid bill. We don't know if we have to pay it or if a contractor is going to pay it. Warranty. Had some work done, and it's still being determined who's responsible to pay for it.
That wasn't the issue we had before, was it, Scott?
What's that?
The issue we had with the developer that wanted his bond money back?
No,
Different
no.
job?
This is some work over near the mill,
Okay.
the water main project.
So we'd need to know that sooner than later, because,
We were just talking about it in the office today, and that should be getting over to you soon,
okay.
tomorrow possibly. But the true-up amount is $300,000. It's going to come out of sewer retained earnings.
Okay.
But
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks,
Jonathan?
George, too.
Yeah, and George. So this, when's the, oh, Chief, sorry, I missed you. Thank you.
Just real quick, there was, I'm working on a bylaw change for the ACO, so I'll be submitting that. And also, I know we talked about noise ordinance and solicitors, so I'm gonna try to get that in next week, but that's what I'm working on my end.
Good.
Getting a lot of complaints about the solicitors.
It's good to know that they're coming. Jonathan, when do we close the warrant?
Did we do that yet?
We did not, we should.
It's coming up. It's on one of the agendas. I remember putting it on.
All right.
It's
I knew the
coming
date
up
was
again.
coming, I wasn't sure, like, what the deadline is. Okay. Anybody have any questions, FAA, for the, on the warrant? Rich?
Isn't it capital improvement items? Tomorrow's the deadline?
Tomorrow is the deadline for capital improvement. We haven't gotten a lot in. I think that the chief wants to make an adjustment in a car that was ordered, and of course, every second that goes by, it goes up about $450,000. So we want to try to get that paid for and delivered as soon as possible. I'm going to ask Council on Aging to put something on. If it reaches the $20,000 threshold, they're going to have a donation to be announced later of materials and labor to give that center downstairs a nice facelift. And even though it's not coming out of our budget and we're not borrowing for it, I think we should, if it meets that threshold, make sure we go through capital improvement, put it on the list. Trying to think if there's anything else. Of course, the sewer or water projects. It's going to be late this year, which is good.
Okay. Board members, any questions on the warrant? Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. All right. Anything else for the budget review for tonight?
Any questions while we're, time to ask? I mean, with the questions on it, it's still early. Still looking for numbers, but, you know, based on what you got for revenue projections and what you made cuts, you already got 150 in cash gone, using that up.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably all guess that the 250 isn't gonna hold for the schools. Right? So, we're all.
And I
We're
think-
looking at, upwards, it could be $500,000.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, it's important that when we go through the assessment number, we include the amount for that capital.
Right.
And we ask Rich to come up and explain replacing debt in that debt exclusion vote that's going out, because that's part of the assessment, and that will be,
So then.
that's a non-negotiable ballot voted item from September of '22, where the people authorized $7 million, but we don't know how to pay for it. So we need to find a way to pay for it so that we don't go through what we did last year.
So, I guess if there's no objection, Mr. Chairman, that might be a good time now to kind of start talking about that.
I'm talking about it now.
So do we have any ideas of what exactly the school is doing here? In other words, they have a ban that they've issued. Charlton's got part of that ban, we got part of that ban. They're gonna either issue a bond, and maybe Rich can
I think
kinda,
they're doing a bond and a ban. I mean, they're doing a short term and a long term.
but they haven't issued bonds yet, right? Correct, Rich? That's in July.
Correct.
So they're either gonna issue the bonds, or they're gonna renew the ban, right? Do we know what they plan on doing?
I think the option two that we had discussed early on was gonna be the plan.
So does Dudley, do we get our portion of this, and we decide how we're gonna make the payments? Or?
They
how-
borrow the
how is
money.
decision made?
They borrow the money, they make the payments, we get the bill.
So we don't have any input onto whether or not they're gonna issue a bond in July or renew the ban.
I think that they've given us some opportunity to have
Where do
some
we have
input
these-
on it.
When and how do we have these negotiations? As far as what they're gonna do, and does Charlton have to agree with that, or is it proportioned off to Charlton?
I think Charlton paid some up front, right off the rip, so it's gonna be a slightly different,
Yeah, they'll get their own
Yeah.
number. Did they put in 1.5 million? Is that what Charlton put up front?
something like that, you know.
So I guess that's one of the questions, is when are they gonna issue bonds, or are they gonna renew the ban? And if they issue the bonds in July, what options do we have in making a payment? Do we make a payment?
We don't make a payment.
Well, the
It's
assessment
part, it's
comes
part,
first.
there's a bottom line assessment,
Right, but,
and they've gone through based on your enrollment figures and the approved operating
Rich,
budget.
I know how they calculate it. I'm just saying, when the first interest payment is made, we're gonna have options.
No, we're not.
You're either gonna make a payment November of 2025, January 2025, correct?
I might have
Or
some.
July of 2026. So do we have the choice? Do we make the choice, or they make the choice for us?
They make the choice. We were invited to the table as a courtesy.
So
it's six of one, half a dozen of the other. The takeaway from the discussion is there is a component of what is going to be assessed to the town of Dudley that we may debt exclude.
I get the debt excluded part of it. What I'm saying is when. The question is when. When do we, if you're gonna move forward and you're gonna put a debt exclusion on the ballot, if the Board of Selectmen want our recommendation, we
Of
need to know
course.
what we need to know when. We need to know what option the school is using. Do we make our own decision, or is it two-town decision?
The school issues debt. Both towns have approved it.
It's a negotiated decision to issue the debt, I think.
Remember, they gave us options.
I have the options.
So
From the,
Well, option one and two, there were a few that I think have been since ruled out because they were ridiculous. I think two is what we were coming down on.
But according to the district
all right, so
agreement,
option two, your first interest payment's January 15th of 2025,
okay.
which means that we're gonna have to have that
That was part of the,
excluded.
That was part of the discussion.
that was part of the discussion.
Option, I think it was option three, puts us to January 15th of 2025.
Then it becomes a discussion of cash flow for the school district
Means If
internally.
they're gonna put on a debt exclusion, it would be next May, right?
The problem is they have to, the larger problem is that they have to carry it because when they borrow the money. So if we take like an interest only up front and delay the payment, it's still a cash flow issue with them. They still have to make payments on it.
Right.
So it doesn't, I mean, Rich, step in if that doesn't sound right, but,
I think that was one of the reasons that they had the discussion. It was a courtesy. The bond's going to be issued, we're going to pay it via our assessment, so there's going to be the August 10th, October 10th, November 10th, December 10th, by the percentages for the 8 throughout the year. I'm not going to wire a specific interest payment. Part of the cash flow for the school district is going to be, these are when our debt payments are due. This is the money we have in reserve, and that's how they're going to make their budget work. As opposed to, as town treasurer, I'm going to wire out money on July 31st for our August 1st debt payment. There's debt that is serviced directly through the town of Dudley, as opposed to, this is overlapping debt. Both towns have approved this. We're discussing how best to pay for it. So,
Right. So that's what I'm saying, is if they renew the ban versus issuing bonds in July and renew the ban, your first interest payment is November 15th of 2025, which is was it 102 or 155?
can't do this
Can
one.
I'm just saying, that would be our payment, so therefore, do you immediately go for a debt exclusion right now, or do you make that payment out of stable or free cash?
It's all
and
part
then
of the
move forward
assessment.
into the principal payment, which isn't till 2026 on when they renew the ban.
All right, so you're trying to
Try
figure.
to prolong it, we just had a big override, that's what I'm saying. You know, you get enough
So
more debt exclusion, right?
interest rates are at a 20-year high, so the idea that you're making an interest-only payment as opposed to starting to amortize some of the debt.
Isn't the ban at 4.5%? If they issue bonds, it's gonna be probably higher.
But the longer you're in the market, the lower it's going to be. It's going to be closer to the 10-year note as opposed to the short-term note, especially at less than a year. But, I mean, I understand what you're saying. You'd much rather pay a smaller dollar amount for this year, and you get a run-up to getting a debt exclusion already in place, so that the net effect is only in the event it didn't go through.
In the following year,
Right.
that's,
Yes, I understand that. I think right now you have an opportunity to go through and explain the town's situation, that there is some room on the DE one to go through and get back to a previous year's level and sort of solidify the future payments. And it's all part of that bigger discussion on how we'd like to do things.
So we would, I completely understand without question what do we strategically, do we put it on now when everybody still has open wounds?
there you go.
Do we let stuff go down a little bit
Like I
and
said,
put it on later? And we use some stabilization to help out with the assessment for the first year until, I know, that's the
I just don't
that's the
know
question.
from the board, I don't know how the school works, I don't know if we get to make our choice on our half.
It's gonna come as part of the
Or is
assessment, that the way the district, and I'm sure you know this, but I'm saying it just publicly, the way the agreement is, capital is part of the assessment every year.
Right.
Well, so it's gonna be part of the assessment, it's not gonna be separated out with that.
But if we don't negotiate it then, and they issue bonds in July, your first payment's coming November 15th. If they choose that option, they're gonna come November 15th, and that's gonna be, what is the November 15th one? I don't know what that one is, but for our half, it's 348. We haven't been able to handle that.
We'd be able to handle it by
Well,
draining stabilization,
right,
but,
exactly.
right.
So, I guess that's, I mean, we can't make a decision here, but we gotta kinda know what we have available to us in terms of negotiating as far as how this thing is set up. So if we can do our own, that would be great. And if they Charlton did their side, if they wanna issue bonds and pay it off right now, they've already put $1.5 million into it, so if they wanna do their side, fine.
I think we're thinking the same way, but I think I have some of the answers that don't make that likely to happen, but we can, I think the best thing we're doing, Mr. Chairman, is not talking about this in my office, but we're talking about it on camera, so everybody who's watching understands the
If anybody
situation.
has any other idea.
Right,
Right.
and I, just in talking to the Charlton team, they're watching this pretty carefully too. So, they're waiting on numbers too, our counterparts. Okay,
You have any comments, questions on?
all right. Anything else, Mr. Ritter? Okay.
And just a reminder that from the municipal side, we're keeping it from the things that we can control and the board can control and the FAA can recommend on, we're keeping it tight.
Yeah,
We're at 0.73%. We've got about 50 grand left over right now. We're going into union negotiations. We're waiting for final numbers, of course, but we're keeping it tight. We're funding our highway department. That override did not pass last year. We're funding our administrative, our town hall side. That override did not pass last year, so it's tight, but we're making it work.
good. Anything else? Good? All right, next up, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Landry, seconded by Mr. Sullivan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Oh.